Good to go.
All right, I will call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for Thursday, September 7th, 2023 at 6:02 p.m. Quorum has been met, we'll take a roll call.
Mr. Quagliano?
Here.
Mr. Troy?
Here.
Mr. Praddy?
Here.
Mr. Bishop?
Here.
Mrs. Murray? Here. Mrs. Gallagher? Here. And Mr. Thompson?
Here.
With that, we'll move to number 2, which is the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have Mr. Oppenhagen to introduce who will lead us.
Hello, I am Cole Copenhagen. I teach job skills. Oh, yep, there you go. Got it. There we go. Hello, I'm Cole Copenhagen. I teach job skills at Hunley High School. Today I have with me 3 students, Joseph Zimmerman, Avery Weinberg, and Caroline Malicki here to help us say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The next section is number 3, public comment. We have 1 public comment, Julia Feldman.
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to speak about our superintendent search, because I have a couple questions. Back in May, on May 19th, the district had published a statement that was written by the BOE president stating that the district will engage in a national superintendent search as we work towards the appointment of a permanent superintendent. We will continue to keep our staff, families, and community informed of this process as it begins to take shape over the coming months. For starters, you're amazing, doing a fantastic job. Thank you so much. Just in the interest of, as someone who has a child in this district and just keeping abreast of things, I wanted to know what's been going on with that, because it's now September and we've not really seen any information about the process for that search. Like, is it happening? Has it started? Have we hired an expert firm that specializes in helping with the search? This person is going to start in like 9 months, which is, as superintendent searches go, not really all that long of a time. And so just as, a parent, we were promised some updates for the community, and I understand there's a lot going on, but, we haven't really gotten any updates, and I was really curious about what the status of that was. Are there any candidates that are being interviewed? What's going on? We'd like a status update because we haven't gotten one, and it's been 3-4 months now. So it's been a significant amount of time. Also, about 3 weeks ago, it came to the community's attention that we're going to have a school board seat vacancy coming very soon. And we've not heard anything about that either. And again, that is a big deal. Because changes in boards, changes in superintendent, this is our leadership. So as a parent, I'm just wondering when we were gonna hear about that, what's going on, what the status of that is. And I've been kind of looking around, I haven't seen anything. And so, I have a lot of questions about that, and I think probably others in the community do too, because we're gonna be looking at some significant changes in our leadership coming up, and the sooner the better. I would love as much transparent and open and immediate communication about that as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll address a couple of the things, or you can sit down or.
Oh, I'll stand, it's fine.
The first thing around the board member changing, to this point, I have received, and I don't think the district has received any resignation of a board member. So if we were to receive a resignation, we would follow the same process that's been in place for.
And that would occur the minute that someone stops being a resident here, is that correct?
Right, hopefully they would give us some notice before
Okay.
they stop being a resident, but,
Okay, just wondering, because again, like leadership change makes me anxious. I know some other parents with COVID and everything else, there's been a lot of changes. So any information we can get would be appreciated.
right, but to this point, we don't have a resignation, so there's no action
Okay.
to be taken. Regarding the superintendent, So we decided to focus a bit on getting the year started with all the different things that have changed. We will probably start that process towards the end of October or so as we do a full search if that's needed. So,
Okay. And when you say if that's needed, what, I'm assuming that would always be needed? We want the best possible candidate, so we would want to look around for that, yes?
if it's needed, yeah.
I think it would be needed. This is a really big role. One of the big concerns about this is that it's done the right way with all of the steps involved and we're not like cutting any corners. I think it's really important.
No, I appreciate that, and I think that opinion is shared by some on the board.
Okay. Well, and also a lot of people in the community. So we're going to hear about all of those steps, right? So we're going to know if anything gets skipped or anything. We're going to know about that immediately, right?
Yeah, if we're gonna go ahead in November, or October.
Well, I'd say October.
For this, we would outline all the steps, it would be open to the community, we'd seek input.
And that will be posted publicly, yes?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. I have no other public comments. All right, we will move on to number 4, revision and adoption of the agenda. I would like to make a motion to move number 12, number 13, which is the second public comment, to move it before number 11, which is before we go into closed session. I just think that makes more sense to do that. So I'll make a motion to do that. Can I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so we will move that to there. Any other changes that were suggested? We will do that. I'll use that as the voice call to move it forward, and we will move to number 5, which is the Special Education Committee. Ms. Gallagher.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to introduce Ms. Gill, who is going to provide us an update on some wonderful things going on in special education.
So, I know, it's the green button. I'm just so grateful not to have to turn on the Zoom for a minute. I'm super excited again to have this opportunity to highlight the great things happening in special education. One of the things we'll introduce tonight is Mr. Bovenhagen and 3 of our students from Huntley High School Job Skills class. And they're going to actually come on up and share with you some of the wonderful skills they're learning and things they're doing in their class. And we're going to share some samples of what they're doing. So I am actually going to turn it over to them.
The button this time. Like I said, I'm Cole Popenhagen. I teach job skills at Huntley High School. And they're going to tell you a little bit more about the things that they do with the candle business. But at Huntley High School, we have a candle business. It's called Sensibility Candles. It was formerly Ed Special Sense. And then due to COVID, it kind of took a little hiatus. And then actually while I was student teaching with Lita Casper, we decided to kind of bring it back. And then when she moved into the department chair role and I moved into full-time teaching, it kind of just meshed well together to take it to job skills. So we moved it to the job skills program. The first thing we did was kind of rename the program, revamp it a little bit. It's something that the kids really enjoy to do. It gives them real life experience. They're actually making the candles, and then they'll talk about how we sell them, kind of interacting with customers, money skills, all that kind of stuff. So I will turn it over to them.
As a class, we search a supply website where we purchase the candle jars, lids, scent oils, and other materials. The first item we find is the candle jars and lids. Then we each get to select the candle scents we would like to sell for the season. After that, we will all vote for the top scents and place a big order for the season. We also cut the jars by including the wicks inside the jar.
Hi, my name is Caroline. I'll be talking about making the candles. When it is candle making day in class, we partner up with a classmate to make the candles for the day. First, we get the hot wax in a measuring cup. Then we add drops of the scent and the color dye to the wax. We then have to stir the mixing for 2 minutes. After that, we pour the mixing into the candle jar and wait for it to harden overnight. Hi, my name is Avery. I will be talking about selling the candles. The big ones are 5 and the little ones are 3. We have to add and subtract to make sure we have the right amount of money. We use the money we make to pay for our lunches on field trips and to have a big dance at the end of the year with Buddies Club. We are going to be at the farmer's market next Saturday. I really like making and selling the candles. Hope to see you next Saturday.
So like Avery said, new this year, we're going to go back to the Huntley Farmers Markets. So next Saturday, the whole day, 8 to 1, we'll be there selling candles. And then actually today, I had the students pick out a couple samples to give to the members of the board. So I'll pass those out real quick.
Oh, thank you.
So this coming Saturday? We're getting there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
What's your favorite scent that you guys make? What do you think is the most popular one?
I use not like I like espresso one. That was like my most favorite one.
Wow, these are really.
These are fantastic.
Awesome.
What is your favorite?
You want to say? My favorite kind of candles is actually vampire blood and also sugar plum berry.
What does vampire blood smell like exactly?
I don't know, but probably, yeah.
Maybe some garlic, I was hoping. Good, thank you very much, you guys, that's awesome. We'll see you next Saturday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would you guys come back up? Would you be willing to take a picture, please, with the board? Come on back.
My proud moment.
I'm hoping they can see it.
Yeah,
Sounds good. And then just make sure I can see you guys, board members, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wait.
Okay, thank you so much again. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Quagliano and the Finance Committee.
We're already in finance.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, item 6.1 is the payables. We have our purchase orders and press checks, accounts payable, and disbursements listed. Is there any questions from any of the committee members concerning those items that are in those reports? Any questions from any of the other board members concerning any of those items? Not, then are we okay moving them forward? We'll look forward to consent for the next board meeting. And 6.2 is the monthly fiscal updates. Mr. Altmeyer, would you like to highlight items in your report?
Just one item to highlight. The audit went very well. Auditors were here, ended a few weeks ago. They are finalizing a few things with the singular audit, the A133 audit. Once they have that done, they'll submit us our final audit report. and we have scheduled them to be here, as we do on an annual basis, for the October board meeting to present the final audit report. So, as soon as we get that audit report back from them, we spend a lot of time, ticking and tying every single number in that report, reviewing all the footnotes, as well as putting together the MD&A. So, once we get that, we've kind of got our work cut off for us for about a week probably, to get that done. But we will get that done before certainly the middle of October, when the auditor comes out to present the board our final audit report. So just wanted to bring the board up to speed on that. And remind the board that at our next board meeting, we will have our budget hearing before the board meeting to present our final recommendation for the FY24 budget. So other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'm just gonna guess on the debt restructuring, we're further and further away, correct?
Correct, yeah. Rates are going the wrong way.
Right, okay. Presumed.
Just one question. So when the audit is done, is that when we would expect the 2022-23 ASA to be released? Or what is the timetable for that? The
ASA, Annual Statement of Affairs. That is not at the same time. That's a separate timeline. I can get you the exact month that is due, but that is not due at the same time as the annual. Yeah. I can find that out. I don't want to give you wrong information.
The financial data is through June, right?
Correct. It's gonna be a June 30th date on the audited financial statement.
Yeah. I might be able to get you that by the end, within a few minutes here.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions anybody would like to ask or bring up with Mr. Altmeyer? On his update, we also have our activity reports in there that just goes through the fund balances. Any questions concerning that item? Informational, we can move on to 3, which is a revenue expenditure report, Mr. Altmeyer.
Thank you very much. In front of you, you have the July 2023 financial executive summary. It's usually this time of year, there's not a lot to report because it's the first month of the year and it's one of the summer months. So with that, I think the only thing I would highlight is, health insurance claims, came down a little bit, certainly from the May and June amount of claims, but still trending very high versus the current displayed draft of the budget of $11.9 million. Which will change, and we talked about that at the last meeting. We're recommending an increase on the health insurance claim line item for the final draft of the budget. Other than that, nothing else to report, but I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
From the committee, any questions concerning the first month financials? Okay. Sorry, Mike. Nope. I'm used to looking right. I should be looking left. Okay. Finance informational, and so we can go on to the 6.4 is the revenue contracts. So we have 2 revenue contracts that have been proposed. Haven, Art to Remember, and the Marlowe Music Department fundraisers. Any questions concerning those 2 contracts? And we'll move those forward to the board for consent.
And I can add, November 30th is when the annual statement of affairs is due, so we generally start processing that in the month of November.
Thank you.
Okay, that closes out finance to building and grounds, Mr. Troy.
Thank you. Item 7.1 is the O&M updates. Mr. Rinkasik, being festive today, anything to highlight on the O&M updates?
All projects, except a couple, are substantially completed this time. One is the exterior curtain walls at the high school. There was some activity earlier this week. We're testing, working on a curtain wall at the high school, so they could find a way to temporarily relocate 2 classrooms at a time, so we could try to do one single 2-story curtain wall section to see if it would be reasonable to continue around the building as such, or if the disturbance was too excessive, then we'd have to creatively find another way to do or postpone it till next summer. Second thing I want to highlight is our custodial contractor is performing very well. And if you happen to be around the high school in the evening, you may notice that there's a autonomous cleaning device now roaming the hallways. So, not many HR problems with that.
No talking back.
Voltus, is a partner of ours that we've used for demand load response, and synchronous reserve response program is going to just start to ramp up pretty soon here. They came in to see me and talk about the contract. They, sad but good news, if there's such a thing, and that is, after there's some information on here about the incentive dollars we did receive for participation in demand load response this year. The sad news is, prior to 3 months from when they visited me, our net coincidental peak demand for each of our campuses was a negative number, so we can no longer participate in the program, but it's a good reward for us. We're saving a lot of money on our monthly utility bills. And the last thing is, it's one of my, I can use the word pet peeve, if you will. It's one local government unit taxing another government. And the point I wanted to make, if you look, there's a sheet in there. I actually calculated the municipal taxes and the state taxes that the school district experience on our utility bills from month to month. What it costs. You happy to answer any questions about anything else on there?
Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the board in general? So regarding the bus lot out back, it looks like it's ready to go. I see the buses are parked and there's some other vehicles that are.
Oh, I'm sorry, I kind of brushed right over that, Paul.
It's okay.
Yes, the charger in their permanent home, and a few bumps in the road commissioning. I just got word today, it's officially fully functional. They were working, not all ports, and our transportation department creatively been working around that for a few days, but they uncovered the problem and fixed it today, from what I understand.
Oh, great, okay.
So yes, all good to go.
It's all online. Excellent.
The solar portion, we probably, last week they told me in about a week or so, they would be calling me to tell me that they're ready to start doing testing on the installation. They're very close to the point where, you know, all the wires are connected to things and ready to flip the switch and start testing.
Great, okay, thank you. Anything else to highlight on here, on the report itself? Nope, all set, okay. Moving on to 7.2 then, the change order for Abbey Paving. If you would, please.
Again, with our paving contract for Marlo Martin's work there, including the reconstruction of the entrance at Haligus and the drive over to Martin and the Martin bus lot. When all the subgrade was uncovered and the geotechnical engineer got a closer look and took samples and analyzed them in a little more detail than he could when we just did some random sampling before bidding, suggested that we could reduce the amount of Portland cement to go in the mix into the gravel, which is a very sustainable thing to do in lieu of taking it out and replacing it and a lot less expensive. So we got a substantial credit there. We did find, though, that there was additional curbs and sidewalk from when the plans were put together last fall that damaged and warranted replacement. So we asked for that to be included. Some minor material changes on gravel for the cement mix and things. That was very reasonable. And there was a nagging problem since the day we built the building about a utility clean out over by the entrance to the gym across from the track. It didn't have a real good stable cover on that clean out. And we asked for that to be replaced with an appropriate lid and encased in some concrete so it wouldn't move around. But the good news is it's a net credit to the school district, a notable amount there. But we'll be asking the board to consider approval.
Any questions from the committee? Questions from the board in general? All right, thank you for your diligence on that, and credits are always good. Moving on to 7.3, the change order with Hargrave Builders, please.
Okay, our foods lab renovation project went very well this summer, and that was a pretty tight schedule, and we were fortunate we had a really good contractor there to deliver in a timely fashion. We found that the underground sewer lines that had to be connected for the reconfiguration were close enough that we didn't, and at the right depth, that we did not have to take out as much underground piping as expected. So there's a notable credit there for minimizing the amount of saw cut up concrete, replaced concrete and excavation and replacing the piping underground. The high school during the project, came in with some very minor adjustments they wanted to consider to better support the program. And in addition, there were some minor improvements that were done to improve the accessibility of the workstation above and beyond code for their experience on the needs of some of the users in the last few years. And also because of the appliances that were available for us to buy and have and delivered on a timely fashion. And so, again, a net credit to the district.
Thank you for the summary. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the board? And I didn't ask before, from the committee, any objections with moving either of these items forward to the board? Okay, so both items will move forward to the board then. That is it for Buildings and Grounds. Legislative Committee, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Troy. Just one update here is potentially more of a policy thing, but I sat in on an IASD seminar about AI and the use of that in education. And again, I think this is something that the district is going to have to look at. I know that IASD is looking at it, and there'll be some policies that are coming around here, but we're going to need to understand from the teachers and others of how to utilize this as a tool and also caution against it as a way to kind of make the work easier. So there's a little bit of a balance there, but this is something we're definitely going to have to watch. ChatGPT, I've used it, is a fantastic writer. And when the fifth graders figure that out, it's going to make it a little bit harder for the fifth grade teachers, I think, to deal with. So just something to watch, and I sat in on that seminar, and I'm glad they're looking at it, and I think in my discussions with Ms. Lombard that the district is looking at it as well.
Give a quick little update on Dr. McCrindle, and potentially one of the other directors, will be going to a, workshop here in the next couple of weeks on that. That's discussion around there. Lots of districts are looking at that, and then they will be, working to start a committee with our staff to have those discussions. I think from the, brought up those who are utilizing that, there's opportunities that we can absolutely look for caution, but opportunities that we can use as learning experiences, and then some recommendations coming forward just on how we use it in the classroom at all levels, and then potential policy as well.
Thank you for that. That's good news. So, nothing to move forward, so we'll move to number 9, board discussion. So the item here in 9.1 is the board had a special meeting, was it last week? Yeah. Like a long time ago, but
2 weeks.
2 weeks ago, where we went into closed session. This is one of the things that's allowed to be under closed session, but we went through starting right board self-evaluation workshop. And I thought it was, personally, I'll give you my opinion, we'll open up to the board for other discussions. I thought it was a good discussion. I think we all got to know each other a little bit better. There was a lot of good things that came out in the framework that kind of came out of there as well. I think there were 3 action items that came out of there. One was to evaluate how we run our meetings, because they've consistently been pretty long, and then looking at that, of the effectiveness of that. So you'll see that when I'm writing something down, I'm actually checking the time a little bit here so we can kind of get some data over the next meetings to see what's driving that. We certainly don't want to shut off any Q&A that's going on here, but we also want to be respectful of all our times and the folks who want to watch time with that. So the second thing was, I think the board as a whole owes Ms. Lombard and the cabinet what we want from the district. And I think some of the discussion that'll happen tonight around the strategic planning is part of that, where the board will put its input into what do we want to see from the district, and then the administration then comes up with a plan to reach that. And so you'll see that. I don't think we've done a good job. That's my personal opinion, at least in the beginning part of the new board, to do that. We can do better with that. And then there was a third item, was to more community engagement around town halls. I think what I heard was that in the 2015, 2016 timeframe, there were town halls set up, and we certainly had the strategic planning, but we want to do more of that so we can have more two-way engagement with folks in discussion, because I think that's important. As someone who sat in the audience, It's good, it's not always, the best to just hear somebody talk. It's better to have more dialogue so you can work through something. So, I personally, support that as well, so I'll stop talking. If there's any other comments about, how that went for everybody.
You summarized it pretty good.
Yeah. Jerry? So we'll move to number 10, which is, Board of Education, 10.1, the minutes. So, we're looking for approval with any issues with the minutes that were provided. Anybody saw? Okay, looks like we will move that forward there.
Excuse me, Mr. Goodman, do you have a list of the minutes?
On here, there's the 8/17 regular session closed, but there's that. So, August 17th, August 3rd, and then the special meeting on August 3rd, are the ones that are listed on the agenda. Did I miss one?
No. They're just not on the printed one here.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Oh,
No,
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 that's okay.
good question. Thank you.
That's
No, that's fine. I thought I missed something. I should
No,
have
you're good. Yep.
If there's no comments, we'll move forward there, and then to 10.2, the 6-day enrollment.
So this is an annual report, in the packet, shows kind of the breakdown of, each year the district goes head after the 6th student day, which would have taken us to August 23rd. On the breakdown, kind of goes by, grade level, and then at the high school, and middle school, ECC and Light are, also, I guess those are broken down by grade level as well. Also in the packet there, it's kind of showing just a little bit of the historical, data. Our 6-day enrollment for this school year is 8,469. Last school year was 8,548. 2021-22, 8,630. 2020-21, 8,842. And just for our point of comparison, looking at the last school day of last school year, we were at 8,661. And so there is growth there during the school year, and then we do see some drop-off, people moving in the summer months as well. And so that is really just for information. We do go ahead and report that, but any questions with that 6-day enrollment? We'll utilize this information historically as we go through the school year and then look at staffing things later this winter, early spring for the next school year.
I don't think I have any questions, just comment would be how exceptionally low our class sizes are, how favorable, I mean, in a good way. Very favorable class sizes, we're losing about 100 kids a year based on my math there, and I think the biggest, I don't think I've seen that small of a incoming kindergarten class in forever, in a long time. Interesting, because I know we have a lot of newer development on the horizon here that it'll be interesting to see how that all fleshes out. But in general, I mean, from a class size experience for our teachers and for our students, to me, it's in a very good position.
You'll actually see in our next presentation, as we look at some of the strategic plan indicators, some staffing models that we look to build out during the school year based on enrollment and student needs. One of the other things that could be looked at is going back and doing like a CASARTA report again. We utilized that during the growth years. It was pretty on target. We've been leveled off here for a little bit, and now we're starting to see that decline. There are some reports that show that enrollment, just based on birth rate and all of that, is down, but we are seeing areas in our community that are starting to develop again. So that may be something that we might want to think about down the road as well.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Mr. Quagliano said. I mean, I'm always a little surprised by this because what I hear from the community is, oh my gosh, look at all the houses that are getting built, and then you see the kindergarten class, and it's I don't really, when I've looked at the enrollment data in the past years, the kindergarten was always a bit more volatile. Like I think there's people who choose not to put their kids in kindergarten, but do in first grade. So I've always kind of used the first grade as the stable one. But that is definitely a lower number than we've seen in a while. I did a little math this afternoon about it, and if nothing changes in the first through fourth grade, when they get to high school, the high school is going to be about 2,300 students. So, again, some people talk about we should go build another high school. I think that's in the cards. Based on that, we should focus on making sure we have the right structure for the kids that we have, so there's benefits with it as well. And then we got to watch to see if there's an inflection point where it stabilizes or it starts growing, because that's when it starts adding up the cost, because you need to add teachers and do things to support that. So I appreciate the structured discussions that you're going through.
All right, our next is the exciting part of the school year. Well, there's lots of exciting parts of the school year, but as we look at, last month, we kind of closed out with a report on our strategic plan measures and indicators for last school year. Just a reminder, we are in year 4 of the strategic plan that was developed prior to the 2020 school year. So this the school year is year 4, and we'll have year 5. The 4 key long-term outcomes that came out of that process are that all students achieve personal growth and development, all students are prepared to achieve their lifelong goals, all students learn in environments that are safe, secure, and supportive, and the district remains sustainable to meet the needs of the students and the community. So those are the 4 kind of bullet areas that we're going to talk about here in just a little bit with our indicators. But cross-cutting concepts that you'll see throughout all of those are educational equity, two-way communication, innovation, continuous improvement, and that fiscal responsibility. So when we as a district sat down to start looking at those 4 areas and what indicators we felt were going to be important moving forward, kind of looked at it through 3 buckets. That first being student success, student achievement. That second being reimaging the staff experience, environment. And the third, the community engagement component. And so you'll see all 3 of those things as key focus areas through these 4 outcomes. And of course, that fiscal responsibility kind of interwoven through all of those areas. So tonight we're going to look at this just a little bit different. We've got the 4 areas, but each of those, they might have something that lends itself well under human resources. Some might lend themselves better for learning and innovation. Others might be finance or communications. And so what we're going to do is each of us have an area that we're going to take the lead on walking through, giving some high-level information about the indicators and why we felt those were important, and then have some time for questions, discussion, a little bit of that direction that you were talking about, knowing that there may be some things that, if there are areas that you feel very strongly as a board at, that we can kind of go back and rework some of these. There's other things that maybe had been on in the past that are still things that are going on in the district, but we're maintaining those. And if those are maintenance type things, we did not put them in as a goal. Those are things we're doing and we should be doing already. So these might be some other areas that we really felt strongly based on a lot of input, surveys, feedback from staff, from community, things that we've heard, and then things that we just know are super important for our district. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McCrindle first. She's got the majority of the slides under learning and innovation, and hence you really should, because it's all about the students and their achievement and whatnot. So
thank you. Good evening. So this first cluster of KPIs focus on literacy. That's what we started with. And we broke them up with proficiency and then growth. And then in the past, we've always combined SAT and IAR as one goal. What we found is last year when we presented our strategic plan to you was we met on IAR, but not necessarily SAT. And so we have to average and do all this stuff to come up with that score. We don't think it's a clean picture. So what we did was we broke them apart. You want to be as specific as possible with goals. So that's why there's so many KPIs. But all of these are literacy. The first one still focuses on increasing our proficiency on the state reading assessment for IAR. The second one is looking at the growth on the reading IAR. If you look at the handout I gave you, in the past we have used, we've had the word EAD, 84% in there of kids meeting their expected growth. The state of Illinois in their reporting have developed a standard growth percentile formula with the IAR assessment, which is kind of duplicate of what EAD was doing. And so we felt like we should probably stick to what we're being reported on publicly from the state level versus having a separate company, coming with that formula and telling us what that is. So the way they measure growth is they take a look, if you look at the first little picture on there, which is we put together, which is a very clear image of this, but they take how a student performed in third grade as a baseline. They see how they grew as a fourth grader, and they compare them across year to year. And then the G is they look at other peers statewide, so you're looking at other fourth graders across the state compared to our fourth graders who are in the same grade, the same subject, and have the same prior test score. So they're saying if you scored a 750 and you're in Huntley, and then the kids in Crystal Lake who were a 750 in third grade, did you two grow at the same rate? Which is that's very similar to what ECRA would do with their scores. And so we have found that score is pretty aligned to our STAR assessment predictors and other things that we've been doing the last couple of years. So we feel confident that that would be something we would want to measure this year. It also aligns to what we're reporting out on our state report card. So it's not a different measure, it's that transparency and clarity, and we don't have different measures that we're holding ourselves accountable to. So that's the growth piece on that second goal. The third goal is the reading SAT proficiency. We can't do a growth goal with SAT because we only give it one time to one grade level, and so it's just a proficiency score. The PSAT is not required. What we do give is actually a fall PSAT, and you can't compare fall to spring norms cleanly, so we just have a proficiency score at this time. The fourth goal of literacy is, and we mentioned this before, but the state of Illinois is coming up with the K-12 Literacy Action Plan, and we've been doing a lot of work at the K-5 level the last few years. So we want to continue that work at the 6-12 level, and we are doing that with the science of reading and trying to embed some of those philosophies. We felt like it was important enough to make it a goal so that we are being aligned to what we should be doing in its best practice, which should support our proficiency and growth goals. So that's our literacy cluster of goals. Slide 2 is very similar, except it's math. Same exact explanation. There's a proficiency on math IAR. The growth is calculated the exact same way, just with a math assessment. And then that third goal is the math proficiency on the SAT. So it looks like more goals, but I guess technically it is, but it's just helping us be more specific and helping us to be more transparent with if we need SAT or IAR or not, and it's helping us paint that picture the right way. The third slide I have here it goes. This one is looking at some more of our process type of goals versus a data measures goal. The first one is looking at our MTSS systems. We brought on Ms. Spears this year as our Director of Data Assessment in MTSS. And she is working really hard to help make sure our system is aligned to K-12. We have a very solid system, we believe, K-5, 6-12, we need to do some work on that. And so she's been doing a lot of work on prioritizing that, as well as our SEL pieces and behavior management supports that are going on. And so this year, the process goal of how can we make sure that we're building that system at a K-12 level, and then we'll present something to you guys by the end of the school year, showing and highlighting what that would be. The next KPI on here is us taking a comprehensive review of our multilingual programs. We know that dual language is something we need to take a look at in the programming model and the support that we're giving the students, the staff, and the families. But it's broader than that. Multilingual includes ELL students, newcomers, as well as our dual language students. And so this year will be a year to take a look at that and evaluate and bring some groups together to talk about it and make some recommendations for a multi-year plan for moving forward as we start to work towards bettering that part of our district. The third goal up there is evaluating and building career pathways, including work-based learning opportunities. Micah Kennedy, in their role, works with our college and career readiness components, and so doing a lot more work on how can we make sure that we have those hands-on, actionable, real-world experiences for our students and expanding those offerings. Ms. Lombard and I actually got to go to the manufacturing, what was the official name? Consortium last week, and got to see some of our students who did their internships this summer, and it's amazing what we can offer to our students, and it was 22 of our students this last summer, but it could be more. And so that goal is all about that, and Micah Kennedy is spearheading that work. And then that last one, we took a spin on our personalized learning goal. Personalized learning is hard to define because by nature, personalized is different to everyone. And so there's not a black and white answer to that. So what we thought was if we could take a try at how do we create those authentic, equitable, personalized experiences that are real world, connected, problem-based learning, those skills that we know we need to do for the future to make kids future ready, that would be our focus on that. And so we made a little change to that goal to make it a little bit, to define it a little bit more than just saying it's personalized learning. We have some work to do to evaluate where we are with that, but we do know one of our goals is through our curriculum adoption processes and review cycles to include that as a part of when we're selecting materials and writing our frameworks, that we include that in every class that we're doing and courses for our students. And so those are the ones that Ms. Lombard assigned to me.
We all have
Yeah.
them together, but this is great. So, there are a number of KPIs, so we could listen to all and then do questions, comments, or would you like to focus on this area, asking any of the questions, and we move on to the, would you prefer that?
I just try to wait until the end.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, Mrs. Gallo.
Again, super glad that I don't have to project myself, so thank you. So I have 4 key indicators that in the special services department will be focusing on, of course, supporting all of our indicators across the district, but really focusing specifically on these 4 key areas. The first is around looking at a review of our special education curriculum, meaning obviously supporting our core literacy and math curriculum across our general education programming, but then also looking at what special education programming and curriculum we're supporting across the district. So that review of our curriculum in literacy and math will allow us to evaluate what strategies we can implement, what additional curricular considerations we might need to make and recommend through a comprehensive process that we'll be working on together. So in that way, we would be looking to align our curriculum options across the district, similarly to our literacy and math goals in general education. So some things that we're doing right now are, in collaboration with our learning and innovation administrative team and all of our district staff, we're looking at what curriculum we're currently using in each of our special education programming options. We're reviewing that, evaluating what recommendations we may need to make, where our needs are, and aligning that as well to our achievement data. So right now we're in that very beginning process of evaluating what we have so we can figure out what we need and make appropriate recommendations from there. The second indicator that we have is similar but different. When we think about special education, we provide services along a continuum. So, our continuum is anywhere from students receiving support within the general education setting, and students may be in the general education setting for even up to 100% of their day, but receiving some consultative support or some services. The continuum of special education goes from all the way to students receiving their education in general education, all the way to receiving most of their education in self-contained special education classrooms. So there's a continuum of service that we provide, and those services are determined by student need. So what we want to evaluate is how our continuum supports students across the district, is it aligned across the district, and where are the areas that we may need to make adjustments. So either there's more support, less support, a more comprehensive support, and that it's aligned from beginning to end throughout our district, if that makes sense. So we're, again, working on evaluating that right now and reviewing our service delivery models. We're identifying professional development that we currently have in place and what professional development we might need. And again, reviewing our key performance indicators along the way. Our third indicator is a focus on our light programming specifically. There's a pretty immediate need to really look at where our delivery of transition services can occur for our students who are 18 to 22. Those are students currently who are being supported in our district by incredible staff and wonderful resources, and we want to make sure that we're finding space or spaces that can support their learning needs. And so we have a steering committee that's meeting monthly. We've had 2 meetings so far. We'll continue to meet monthly with community members, parents, students, administrators. We're evaluating spaces. We are doing walkthroughs. We're spending a lot of time being very intentional about the decisions we make for our students in the late program. And then finally, our fourth goal is really around facilitating and engaging families, specifically in the area of special education. We want all of our families to access all the things within our district, and then also recognize that there are additional needs our students and families may need that are related to special education specifically. So we are doing a lot of things to actively facilitate that engagement from the steering committees and our special education advisory committee to our monthly parent education meetings that will be part of what we're offering. We have a mental health fair that we will be hosting. We'll have a transition to adult fair that we'll be hosting. So there are a lot of opportunities. We just want to make sure that we are evaluating the engagement, increasing the engagement to offer more where it's needed. So those are the 4 key indicators and some of the things we're doing and focus on those.
Good evening. Moving on to the next slide here. The first one, we're very excited to get our climate and culture survey out here within the next week. This is something we started last year to collect data from the staff to get a pulse on how they're feeling essentially. And this year we want to focus on the type of support we can provide the staff. So we'll be collecting our baseline within the next week, and then we'll come back around with a plan based off that data, and then collect more data in the spring to make sure we have gone out and provided that staff support where we may be lacking from the district level or building level, whatever that feedback may provide us. On the second 3.2 here, a comprehensive professional development model. This is where we work closely with curriculum, and they go through a cycle on this. They did this last spring where they took a survey where they got feedback on the type of professional development the staff would like to receive. Curriculum then planned accordingly for that first institute day where they did the chance training. And then they did an evaluation and got some feedback on how the chance training went. And they'll do that as we go throughout the 4 institute days throughout the year. So we have very targeted professional development. And also, you know, within this, we're going to get some cohorts started, hopefully over the next month to get folks some LBS 1 endorsements and ESL endorsements through our teacher vacancy grant. So we'll have an update to the board on that here in a couple of months. Where that money will be going to. We just collected data from our staff, so that comes into the PD also. So providing, you know, very targeted needs. And then that transitioned into our staffing framework here, like Ms. Lombard had mentioned earlier. We'll use those enrollment numbers and then also take a look at the needs we have across the district, you know, whether that means shifting individuals from one program to another, and also looking at class size, but we'll evaluate the staff needs across the district and adjust accordingly.
Thank you.
Good evening, board. Let's see if I can do two things at once. The slide in my notes. So starting, there are three key indicators for me, and for the communications department. So starting with the first one, the KPI 4.6. This, one of my main charges this year is to develop a comprehensive communications plan for the district. And the way I want to go about that, and best practice really is to begin with research. I know I touched on this once before when we talked. So I'm going to be doing a comprehensive communication survey to staff and parents to try to get some preliminary information about how we're doing with communication. We'll look at frequency. We'll also be looking at our current platforms. So that's something I want to get some feedback on from our staff who's using some of our communication tools and platforms, as well as our parents who are on the receiving end of these things. So we'll be looking at doing kind of an audit of our website, our mass notification system, which we use for texting, emailing, phone calling, things like that, as well as looking at social media. So we'll start with a survey, but I would also like to, and intend to create a communications committee so that that committee, comprised of staff, parents, maybe even some students, can help us look at the data and help us make some plans for the future. So that kind of pertains to that KPI 4.6. So that we bringing back some information to you all a little bit later this year once I have that information, some recommendations from the committee. The KPI 4.7, engaging families in two-way communication. This is something I think we've talked about before, but this is establishing parent advisory groups at each building and also at the district level. And this is to be able to allow an in-person opportunity with parents who are willing and interested to talk about different things that are happening in the district, to try to probe a little deeper on what things they need clarification on, they want to know more about. And that will in turn drive different parent engagement opportunities, like a parent university. And so these would be at the schools. These are going to be building-based discussions led by the principal, but supported by administration. And as we gather more information as we go along here, we're still determining frequency for these meetings. We're going to be actually talking about this next week with our principals. But that will drive, you know, parent university type events, but also what those meetings look like. So it could be that we'll be doing some, you know, mini presentations at these things as we go forward. But I think having that opportunity for in-person dialogue, asking questions, things like that is really an important way to be getting feedback. So that's really what we're talking about with that 4.7. And then the KPI 4.8 pertains to our community and trying to leverage our volunteers and to be able to increase the number of people who are coming into our buildings to help. And so far, I have met with Eileen Delahanty, so she is our volunteer coordinator here in the district, because I needed to get, as being that I'm new, kind of a lay of the land and to figure out where we've been with this, what our typical volunteer opportunities are, how have we used volunteers in the past. And that was really, that was fun for me to hear all about that. And then to also, you know, kind of take a look at where we are right now, what our needs are right now with volunteers, and to try to figure out how we're gonna fill that need. So I also have had several conversations so far with Del Webb. I look forward to an in-person meeting with their Deanna Law Firm, which is their executive director for the HOA. But also with Ken Kelchner and also even with ENAC, the Neighborhood Advisory Council, who helped us spread the word a little bit about our event tomorrow. So just wanting to make sure that we're staying closely connected to that group too, because I know they've done a lot with us and they have expressed an interest in continuing to do that. So just wanting to kind of figure out, you know, what is it they could bring to our students, I think is really exciting, and I have some thoughts there, but probably it would involve a survey, getting out a survey to them, which I have drafted, to just see what opportunities might lie with them. And then I am serving on the Huntley Chamber Board this year, so I hope to be able to stay connected to local businesses, to keep that door open for future partnerships and things like that could benefit our district and our students. So those are just a few of those things.
Thank you, Mrs. Barr. Thank you, Board. You know, I'm going to highlight a few things. The vast majority of all of the goals and the key performance indicators we've talked about so far really rely on having an appropriate amount, well, of allocated resources so that we can accomplish these key performance indicators and goals. And that rolls into, well, our final goal, and that is to ensure that we remain sustainable to meet the needs of our students and staff and community. So these are 3 financial key performance indicators that I truly feel are really strong goals in that, well, they hold us all accountable. They hold us all accountable to do the appropriate things so that on this first one, for instance, the district will meet or exceed state fiscal health guidelines. In the past, that's all it said, but it's really more important that we return to recognition status. And recognition status under the profile score ranking, and just to give some new board members here, the profile score is a weighted combination of 5 ratios. And those 5 ratios range from cash on hand to revenue expense to revenue ratio to short-term borrowing to long-term borrowing and debt margin. And it's a combination of those ratios that put us in that ranking score. So this goal is to make sure that while we get back to recognition status, because last year when we had a deficit, we ended the year in a deficit position, we ended the year in a review position. And if we don't really want to be there, we want to be under recognition status so that we can be the best we can be. Last year we were reviewed simply because, well, we budgeted a deficit and we ended the year in a deficit. So that kind of put us in the hole from the start. So we certainly don't want to do that. On the key performance indicator 4.2, through a priority-based framework, a process will be created and implemented in order to allocate resources to reflect the strategic plan of the district, right? That's the budget process, and that is a conversation that we have, well, in cabinet almost weekly, right? We challenge each other. Now we have a reason to challenge each other to make sure that well, yes, we're all fighting for those resources, but we're having that really good dialogue as to where should our priorities be. Mr. Bittman mentioned early on, right, the board is going to provide some of that direction on that priority. So that ties directly into this key performance indicator 4.2. And then lastly, on key performance indicator 4.3, this indicator is, well, to continue to identify and implement operational efficiencies throughout the district. We implemented this key performance indicator just a few years ago. And I really like this indicator because this indicator really creates a culture throughout the district, a culture within each and every department, so that we can all hold each other accountable, so that we can all be operating well as efficiently as we can, because we know we need to, especially we're a Tier 1 district. We don't have a lot of money. We've got a lot of really good priorities, a lot of good key performance indicators that we want to accomplish. So certainly from a resource standpoint, from a funding standpoint, we need to do what we can, where we can, to hold each other accountable and make sure we're doing this. So we added to this that we're going to share a report with the board in December as well as in June, not just once a year, twice a year, because we feel that, well, we have to hold each other accountable on both sides. So we have our departments this month meeting with their teams to brainstorm as to what things can we do to make ourselves more efficient. And we've talked about in prior board meetings, well, efficiency isn't just doing things more efficiently. It's looking for money that you may not have previously. It's grants that are out there, whether they're at the federal level or they're at the state level, right? It's making sure that there's no leakage, that we have internal controls in place department by department so that we know what we're spending and we're looking at every single dollar. So that's another key goal that we have here. So I love these goals. I truly do believe they're very strong, and we're looking forward to fiscal year 24 and implementation of these goals. Thank you.
Okay, we'll round out here with the last 3 of the KPIs here. The first one, 3.3, is to decrease the percent of students who are chronically absent by refining and implementing our MTSS support procedures. Last year, as we started to take a look at our chronically absent, that's any student missing 10% of the school year or more, regardless of its excused or unexcused absences. And started tracking those. One of the things we want to do is make sure that we're utilizing attendance codes appropriately. It's more than just, we want our students here, obviously, for multiple reasons. If they're not in the classroom, that academic process processes and progress is not going to be there, but there are multiple reasons. We talk about that personalization. There's multiple reasons why students are out. And so it's more than just me contacting a family to say, your student's been out X number of days this month and going through that process. And so that MTSS support in each of the buildings is really going to take a look at why each student is out. Is it that they don't feel that they are a part of the school? Is it something, maybe it's social emotional, maybe there was something trauma, maybe it was, this class is really, really challenging for me. Until you get to the root cause of that, you can't give the supports and make students more comfortable being into the classroom. And so really getting into, we put some of those structures in place and started to look at that data really intensely last semester. Now, how do we take it a step further to really making sure it's individualized? And then letting parents be aware of that and be part of that planning process for each child. 3.4, conduct an assessment of the environment at the high school level through a bias-based bullying survey with students to identify the areas of concern and develop action plans. Getting that feedback at both of the middle schools from all students and staff, really through the eyes and the lens of those who are in there, gave us some great data. Some similarities between the buildings and their action plans of really making, again, students and staff feeling safe in their environment through what they are seeing and how to make those changes. So again, partnering there to get that information here and then analyzing that and what do we need to do at the high school level. And then 3.5, I hope you guys are okay with this one. We started it rolling, right? To complete a comprehensive review of the school district's behavior management practices, including that constant review of discipline data, expectations, interventions, and supports, meaningful responses, re-engagement practices, and professional development. And one of the main things we want at the end of this is that revamped student code of conduct that lives in the handbook, but also is a resource and a guide for all stakeholders that is easily identified and separated. This will be a key focus of things that we're having a conversation with our staff and administration, but also in our next agenda item, talking about with the parent-teacher advisory committee, so that we have input from everyone as we develop and bring that forward for board approval in the spring. And that will be fully implemented next year. So those processes have already started, and we are really excited to see some of the things here, even in this first month, that are showing enhancements from last school year. So questions, comments, direction?
I just had a comment. I'm thoroughly impressed with each section and each goal, and I can just see how they're all commingled. You know, it's not just, you know, Dr. McCrindle working on one area, Mrs. Barr working on another. All of these things kind of overlap, just to kind of make sure that our students are as successful as possible. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of all the hard work that all the staff and the students, quite frankly, are going to be doing. This is exciting work. I know that was long, but it was good work, and I appreciate all the work that each and every person did putting this together. I think it's fantastic. Thank you.
I agree. I'm a firm believer in that what gets measured gets done.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very detailed plan. I have no doubts about the impetus and the drive to accomplish this, but with a plan this size and it being broken down into so many different areas, and I hate to lace one more thing at your feet, but since it also is kind of like a communication issue, would it be possible to put together at least some kind of dashboard with every area that's detailed in this plan, to see where we are throughout the year to measure the progress? Because this is a battleship-sized plan, and it's impossible to turn a battleship on an instant's notice. When by the time something has gone too far in one direction, it becomes harder to navigate back onto course. So if through these KPIs that we have established here, it's easier to do with the quantitative side of things, you know, if you're talking about finance, you have very tangible benchmarks. Qualitative issues are a little harder to measure, but I think they can be done. And I would just encourage, our teams here to come up with some kind of indicator, so no one is caught up by surprise if we're not hitting these benchmarks.
Mr. Thomas, one of the things that we do is, we would bring mid-year goals, and updates on how we are doing with all of those for another presentation. But we can look at some other ways of even smaller chunks of time on being able to keep, each other accountable for those kinds of things. So we don't get too far and we're like, how do we steer that ship around? So thank you for that.
Yep.
All right, I've got a couple things, so I'll start off on a few that I'll just highlight as I kind of really like them. KPI 2.3, which looks like a commitment to find a permanent home for the life. So I really appreciate that one being on there. Specifically, KPI 3.3, decrease the percentage of students who are chronically absent. If that includes a deeper look at unverified absences, the classes, I'm really in support of that. And I think that's something that we could do and hopefully enhance the education for a lot of students. And then, as you said, 3.5, KPI 3.5, you did kind of kickstart that already, and then I think it's going pretty well, and I hope we can sustain the gains and even grow from there. And then the last one I'll just highlight as a really good one is KPI 4.8. I do think more volunteers in the schools is a good thing. The other thing I'll highlight on this, which isn't in some of the other ones, is a clear, quantified measure. So I appreciate that's in there, and that's one thing I've asked to kind of look for. What are the goals for the growth? What are the goals for the proficiency gains? What are the goals for, you know, chronic absence, right? And I know sometimes people don't want to put down the numbers, but sometimes it's good to have a target to stretch for on that. So just a couple of other things on so Dr. McCrindle, so the KPIs, they make sense and things like that. My view of the numbers, and they may be incorrect, so we can argue that on the side, we don't get into it now, that we're kind of struggling on the math side as a district. So I personally think we should have something specific to math in here beyond just the measures on the growth. So I think some of the numbers will bear that out, and that we need to kind of look at we're doing that, because I don't think it's school specific. I think it's kind of district wide that it's kind of looked at that. So we could talk offline about the numbers, and if I'm wrong on that, we can have that discussion, but it's something to look at. The other thing sorry.
No, I hate to interrupt. Just 1.5, 1.6.
No, they are, but they're just kind of the measure of the IAR.
Okay.
I'm just looking for something specific because I see, in my mind, we've kind of dropped below the growth there, so we should do something extra in this year to try to get there. That was the point of it. So, and then, again, I would challenge to kind of look for a way. I think the growth probably kind of captures this, but trying to find a way to make sure that we don't just get someone to proficient, that the people who are proficient, we get to the advanced, and the advanced, we make sure we're giving them opportunities to grow beyond that. And I think that's the way to kind of spread out and let everybody get to where they're at. So, I don't know how you necessarily measure that, but that's a request.
And that's a great point. I know our building levels do their school improvement plans too, and so they get to very specific of what you're talking about and how they break down the number of kids, the bubble kids, those kids who maybe are almost there to proficient or above. And so their plans go very, they're almost more targeted at that point, but we could definitely think through how to put type of number or some sort on these. It's hard, like you said, to where our scores are currently. It's hard to say that we're okay with a score there, because we aren't. We want all of our kids to be proficient. We want all of our kids to be meeting their growth. And so it's hard to say that's our goal when we want more. And so we definitely could not do that.
Thank you for that. And I understand it's not an easy approach, but we were kind of given the advice, we're just supposed to say what we want, and you have to do it. So,
We talked about it yesterday, but we tried.
I don't think it's ever that easy, but, and then in the third long-term goal, I think one of the areas that I think we should look at, I see in the safe, secure, and supportive, is kind of the turnover side of things. And that's a specific metric that I think we should look at, because I tend to think of a school as being more safe, more secure, and more supportive if the staff has been there a while, if the admin's been there a while, and I think there's ways to measure that quantifiably. So just something to look quantifiably with that, so. And then KPI 4.4, what do you think about adding Special Olympics specifically to it?
What I would say is that absolutely is something that you will see coming. That would be another example of something that we'll be doing to increase family engagement. So that's something that we're already being responsive to and planning for and working with our parents and teachers to get started. So you'll have an update on that soon. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then the last thing that I have is one for Mr. Altmeyer, which is, could we find a way to maybe look at some of the financials that are in the budget and try to communicate it in a little bit more readable way, so maybe somebody who's financially not as literate as you could kind of see that. And my specific request, if we wanted to start somewhere, is maybe around the activities and the athletics, to understand where activities fees go, where the money goes for all the ticket sales and all that kind of stuff. And you could almost break that down into a traditional P&L that I think a lot of people would understand, to understand where we're using that. It's just it's a thought. It's gone through the numbers. The numbers are all there. I think we're aiming for transparency, and this might be, the next step is to make it a little bit more readable to anybody who looks at it.
Absolutely. I love that idea. I think certainly we've been doing a lot of different things for a long time, whether it's our dashboard or it's our executive summary. But I like the idea of providing maybe little different things, maybe USA Today type of charts and graphs on a monthly basis, providing those types of different information to the community to make some of those things, such as activities and athletics, a little more apparent. We can certainly do that.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I've got, and I apologize for taking some time.
You're good. So I'm going to be a little bit of a critic, because in the world that I have worked in over my years, I'm used to seeing goals that are SMART goals and seeing them being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. And in education, it doesn't always map cross-pollinate from what's seen in the business world. But at the same regard, if we don't strive for something, when I read something that says increase the percentage, well, 0.1% and 10% are two different numbers, yet they're both on the positive side of zero. So I wanted to see it a little bit more measurable on the side, but I know that not everything is as measurable and quantifiable as Mr. Bittman had said earlier. So I'm just poking a little bit of holes in it, but I agree that this is a yeoman's task of list of things to do. So that's just my 2 cents to add here.
I'd like to know that that is absolutely not only something that Dr. McCrindle struggled with. We had lots of discussions on that. We had a lot of discussions on that with our building administrators as well, because the way things are reported, when they are reported, part of that is some things are embargoed before we can start to do. And so we were really trying to look at what is the best way to do that. There are some things that we don't want to just achieve something to say we achieved it. We want to stretch ourselves. And so there are a few of these that maybe in that academic area we can go back and look, especially now that we've got a little bit more of the numbers that are being reported. We know where some of our kiddos are. We talked about, Dr. McCrindle briefly said, right now our buildings are developing very specific school improvement plans that tie exactly with the academic things, some of our other areas of the strategic plan, and those are a little bit more, or I'd say a lot more kind of SMART aligned with that, and they feed right in here, which should make their, so we'll go back and look prior to having approval on these. If there are some of those academic things, there's an easy one. I just looked at some of our attendance now that that's fully reported, how we can have some number of things in there. We can look at that with the academic piece as well.
Yeah, and we have some drafts for, literally right here for some stretch goals, which is the angle we would like to take, if we were to put a number, so it would push us. We might not reach it, but at least it gives us something high to strive for, which will help us get better. So we have that drafted. It's just, that's a shift to how we've really done things in the past, and, we definitely bring that back to you guys.
Yeah, and I know in prior years, I don't remember what the proper term was. It was like a rainbow chart where you had the kids in this tier and then this tier, and we had the tiers that would stretch across the different years and the different schools. I don't know if that's still the reporting structure today, but that's certainly a way to quantify and see how many students are we moving from this bracket to the next bracket and keep moving them up.
Absolutely, and that'll be in our November data report once the state data gets released officially, and we'll show you all of that and be able to see the movement and the gains from some of the work over COVID that we are still making, and trying to close that gap.
That's one of those points with when things are reported and being released, they don't blend well and mesh with our timelines of when we would like to do some of this planning. For some of you may remember, it used to be that we were closing out the plan in June and then bringing in July. Now we're here in September with that because of some of the pieces, very similar to our administrative evaluations. When things are coming due, aren't quite when we're done with our plans and things. And so that might be something we would also look at. We'll see those things in November, but we'll have already started this. And maybe it's where we have some shifts with, here's our stretch goal. Now that we have these, maybe we refine them in November based on that data that we have. And that's what we encourage our buildings to do. You have these, you want to develop, and then you should pivot based on the things that are going. Not to back down and say, oh, wait, we strived a little too high, but how do we shift and make sure that the action steps that we are doing are aligning with the data that we have?
Sure. Thank you. That was just my little, that's my 2 cents on this. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just a little, curiosity is on the individual building, but how much do their improvement plans vary? I mean, from quantitatively, do they vary considerably?
They do, because each of our buildings have different makeups of students with their, with EL population, low economics, et cetera. And so I would say, they could go 10 percentage points, which that's a pretty big variable, between different schools across grade levels.
Right. Yeah, I hadn't thought through that. But I'm glad it shouldn't be this vanilla generic. It should be.
It's very different if you look at different campuses.
I would agree with the measurable piece. I mean, I just look at the first 7 of 9 here, and they all start with increase, but there's not, and again, I get what you're saying, if it's 10, but the way it's measured is you need to go with 5, that's fine. I just think, is 1% good enough? So just, well, something, to what you're gonna strive for or what you can get to, but I guess I'm in Mr. Troy's camp of, having that measurable piece. Increase is great, but 1% or 10% is much different. So, other than that, looks great. Great work.
What we'll do is, for the regular meeting, we'll make some adaptations. We can, certainly, we'll put for example, Special Olympics, that was already in the works, but those are some of the action steps that you had talked about here. We will throw some of those in there, because that's absolutely an area we're moving in. But with some of those things, we'll highlight what some of those changes are, and instead of putting it on consent, we'll bring it as an action item, so we can highlight those and then either have approval or move it to the October meeting then. And thank you for some of that guidance. It really helps us as we kind of shift and move forward, that we're going in the direction that is with your goals as well.
Sure, and then one of the things, and yes, this is because I'm the chair of the Facilities, Building and Grounds Committee. I don't see a lot of mention on facilities, and I don't know if that's because we're focusing on the education component, But one of the things that I heard and I firmly believe is that the environment, the physical environment we create for our students is also the working environment for our employees. And so by having a strong, not necessarily stellar, but strong facilities, that creates a positive learning environment for our students and a positive working environment for our employees. So I don't know how you incorporate that or where that can be incorporated, if at all, but I think that has a place in here too.
I definitely think that, you're absolutely right. Facilities, the environment, not just how they feel and safe, secure, all of those things, but when you think about the environment, whether it's lighting, it could be all kinds of different components, they absolutely have an impact on not only the student's performance, but the teaching environment as well for those, wanting to make sure they're providing the best instructional, approaches to our students. And I think one of the things that maybe it's not living in here now, at the beginning we talked about, there are certain things that we are doing, we've really focused on as a district, and we're now just maintaining. And I think if you take a look at our facilities, our O&M department, and the direction that we've gotten over the years, from board and continue to get, really, like, we're doing well in there, and I think it's maintaining those kinds of things. As opportunities come up, I think they're brought up through the discussions at the meetings on how we can continue to keep the facilities that we have going. We're steps ahead, so it's not, oh, later we'll figure that out in the funds, and I think that's a great credit to our department, O&M, who has done that. And that's probably why you don't see so many of those in here now, because it's that maintenance and that routine. But I do think, in the last, KPI that Mr. Altmeyer talked about, when we think about different, operational efficiencies, that maybe there could be some things that might get tied in with that, in that department as well.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to usurp the educational component of this whatsoever, but if we're talking about the district comprehensively, that's a comprehensive component of this too.
I'll just echo what Mr. Troy said. I think wholeheartedly we should have at least one or two objective measures for how our buildings are doing. That way we can see that we're sustaining the gain.
Duly noted, and we'll have those.
I want to take us to 10.4, our Parent and Teacher Advisory Committee.
So we talked about that a little bit here in previous board meetings, but and then that is a goal that is here. In the past, we've had those discussions that will happen annually at the building level. We'll come out and get that feedback, that's part of some of the changes that might be recommended, mainly in our student handbook. But if we really dive in deep to policy 2.150 and 7:190, a board level committee, and we'll say it looks different in all districts, and we've got to decide how we want to do that here in our district. So I have some recommendations on what this board committee would look like. It's the Parent Teacher Advisory Committee. It's one of two. Usually they're blended together into one that is a required board committee. And so you might ask, how will we add this to a committee of the whole? The recommendation that we're bringing forward is that it would not happen on the night of the committee of the whole, that this work would be done on a quarterly basis for this first year in October, January, March, and May, selecting a day of the week. My recommendation would be that we would have Wednesday on each of those months from 6 to 8, where we would have a committee that would be comprised of administrators, teachers, parents, and board members. And that can be anywhere from 0 board members, so all 7 board members attending that meeting. Because it is a board meeting, it would be an Open Meetings Act, so we would have that posted. Because of the size of our district, we've seen some districts that may have 1 parent representative and 1 staff member. Part of that, our district, our buildings are larger, so I would say that we would want a few more representatives from each of the buildings, especially when you get to some of our larger buildings, when we think about Marlowe and the high school. And that location might not fit best here in this room, so we may need to have that posted and done somewhere else where we can have a good, comfortable working environment. So again, while it's the Open Meetings Act 4 times a year, there are specific topics that this committee must talk about. There's school bus safety procedures and policies, discipline policies and procedures, one of those being bullying, but student discipline in general, which then ties into recommendations for the student handbook. Reciprocal reporting, not necessarily what needs to go in there, but having that understanding of how that might tie to discipline and any criminal type activity or things like that. And so it's really, for that one, it's more of a, here's what AR presentation and kind of bringing those forward. Disruptive classroom behavior, and administering medication in schools. So those topics, that's how kind of came up with the recommendation of dividing those out. Some might be reoccurring topics at each meeting, or others maybe as just a standalone where we would look at those policies, procedures, handbook, that matrix that we talked about just a couple months ago here in student discipline, and that this committee then would make recommendations for any changes in policy, procedures, handbook, that kind of thing after kind of diving in, getting a look at it, and making recommendations. A unique twist that I think I'd love to add to that is that I think it would be beneficial. So we have a meeting, if we have a meeting here in October, when we have a meeting here in October, that a couple of representatives from that committee would come to the committee of the whole and report out the discussion that occurred, maybe some of the recommendations that they may have or the work that they are doing, so that the board then is, as a whole, is informed from our committee members of what they're working on and which way we're going, so that in the spring, we're not just trying to do all recommendations at one time. So, after getting a little direction on, are you okay with 4 times a year, preference on the day of the week, who might be wanting to be part of this, our goal is that I've got the application already ready to go as a Google Doc, that we would send that out to parents and to staff to apply to be part of that. The reason it's kind of an application, we would love to accommodate everyone and get everybody's voice, but that's where maybe that they can get more of that voice at the school level and input there. Representatives from this board committee could then go back to report to the rest of those individuals at the school committees on what's being talked about, get some feedback and bring forward there. And then we'll push that out. 2, we want somebody who can be committed to be able to attend all of the meetings, barring an emergency that came up, because we want that work to continue to go forward and not maybe have to spend some of that time to get somebody new up to speed on those kinds of things. Because it would be an Open Meetings Act, everybody who would want to come can come in and be an observer. There would be public comment time, but they just wouldn't have that part where there's that interaction during some of the work that the committee would be doing. So thoughts on that? We're really excited about kicking this off, making this a lot more formalized and getting that feedback, which then we'll see kind of a little bit of a change with our policy committee, right? Because more of these things will be being reviewed on a regular basis, and maybe thoughts coming back to the board for direction and approval.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I would like to be on the committee. I guess one comment, just if you could elaborate a little bit on the selection process, because I know when we've talked about this, we want to make sure there's a diverse set of opinions that are coming into this. We don't want, kind of one group of parents coming in here. We want everybody represented as best we can. With that, but just maybe a little bit.
Yeah, so some of the questions on that application, which school or schools do you have children at? What maybe unique perspective or what perspective can you bring to the committee? What's your reasoning and rationale for being on the committee, so that we can take a look? We're not having all Chesapeake parents, we're all just high school parents. We want a representative group across the board to look at that, and maybe some of the experiences that they have had, whether they've been very, very pleasant experiences or learning opportunities for us as a district. We would want to have those different voices there. And then we would try to do kind of the, I was first thinking, well, we'd have an X number from every building, but I think it needs to be a ratio. sorry, Mataban, Conley, you're a little smaller than maybe the, you know, the high school and whatnot, so we want kind of a percentage, ratio there. So there may be a few more at one building than another because of that. When we look at staff, a representation of different levels, maybe different, backgrounds, in terms of, what their teaching experiences could be, but also their expertise and things. The other component of that is when we have, maybe we're talking about the school bus safety, well, we're gonna want our transportation department's voice to be there, and so we would bring them in during that, that meeting or those meetings to have that discussion. They might do a presentation and get some input from the bus drivers, the bus aides, from our, staff that are here over at the district office. And so those kinds of things, we'll sit down and look at that and really, make decisions to make sure that it will be, representative. And then, I would probably want to sit down, with some on the board to make sure, hey, looking at this, here's the rationale and the reasons for those who were selected. Wish we could have everybody, but then we will encourage those who maybe were not selected. And we don't know how many people are going to apply for this. I hope lots. But then we can encourage them to be part of that. And they look a little different. You know, I think one building's having one coming up, like the Coffee with the Principal, where they're inviting to talk about those different components. And they may be called some different things at each building, but to do that. Does that kind of help answer that question?
Yeah, I think that's perfect, and I do hope when we get this out there, we do get a lot of implications, because this is, in my mind, this is a good formal way to have the two-way communication and impact the environment in the schools where our kids are going.
So I know Mr. Bittman said he'd like to be part of that. You don't have to shout it out now. You can let me know later. But, again, it can be, we've seen some where it's just been, hey, superintendent, you lead that, bring the committee, you know, for, feedback here. But all and any are welcome if you are willing.
Yeah, so I'm remembering the old days of the CFAC, was it called?
Yep.
Which to me structurally is very similar to this, just with a different purpose. I don't remember if we had board members on that committee or not. I don't think that we did, and I think the reason for that is so that the people in the meeting can speak freely and not be steered or guided by a board member adding their comments to that. I think that creates a better environment for people to air out their thoughts and to work cohesively, and then having that report out to the board. And then we take what work is produced out of that committee, and then we work with that and even ask questions for the representative, whoever that might be from that particular committee. It's nothing against Mr. Bittman. I just remember when we dealt with the finance stuff, there was a lot of questions, and I know when we do the strategic planning, I've historically stayed in those meetings. I talk to people, but I really don't want to steer the conversation. I want the conversation to be as organic as possible. I don't want to influence it, and I just don't think it's a board member's position to be in those kinds of meetings.
I think it's okay to have board members that just,
Or sit on the sidelines and
observing.
listen.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely observing whether, you know, but there might be an opportunity where a question's asked that members got knowledge that they can lend itself to. So
It's not to say that nobody needs.
I understand.
It's just finding that balance, because if it's going to be parent-teacher committee, then let it be a parent-teacher committee. Board members are certainly welcome, and it's an open meeting like anything else, but it should be organic in nature, in my opinion. I'm sorry to talk over you.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I guess I'll consider Mr. Troy's, comments, things like that. There is, this actually came out of the discussion around the board of this kind of like engagement versus kind of let things happen. And I think it's an honest, good debate to have. And I think both sides have a good position on this. I think where my head is as we're starting up this committee and it's a board level committee, I think you need to show, in my view, you have to show leadership and actually supporting it. Like, this will happen because we're here. So that's kind of my view of this. It may be hard to believe because I talk a lot up here, but I have gone to a couple of light meetings and I kind of sat inside quietly for the most part, not disrupting things, so I can sit on the sideline.
Maybe we take an approach where we don't have to solidify any board members who are interested in it, but having representation on a rotating basis where you could pop in and pop out, especially if, you know, if this is structured, so agendas are published in advance. Any of us who represent a specific committee that is going to be a topic being addressed, it may be nice to have that board representation at those calls. So maybe a little fluidity in that regard. I understand, you know, both sides of the arguments that are being made here. But I do think a representation from board level to at least show interest without strong-arming the conversation may be a good direction.
I think having board representation is important. I think it shows the commitment of the board members to be a part of this ongoing communication. And I think it's important that we have representation. And I'm okay if you do a rotating basis, but I think there should be at least one or two members who go to all of the meetings to be kind of that face of the board so that, you know, parents, staff, know who to go to if they have questions.
Are we good with a quarterly, separate meeting? And moving forward with getting the application and everything out here in probably maybe even Sunday night. So I'm ready to go with the application, so.
No, it's good. I'm glad this is coming together, so.
Thank you.
All right, with that, if there's no other comments, we'll move on to the revised agenda, which would be the number 13, public comments. So if there's anybody who wanted to come forward with any public comments, and you didn't fill out a sheet, now would be a time to do that. Going twice. All right, with that, we will move on to move into closed session at 7:44 p.m.
Second.
All right, thank you. Can I have a roll call?
Mr. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Craddy?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Troy?
Yes.
Mrs. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano?
Yes.
All right, with that, we will move downstairs to closed session.
Mrs. Woods, thank you for stepping in and that favor.
Oh, you think I can manipulate
Right after Rose was on today?
Yeah.
I'm gonna resume the committee of the whole meeting at 9:42 PM. We'll do a roll call. Mr. Quagliano,
Here.
Mr. Troy,
Here.
Mr. Craddy,
Here.
Mr. Bittman, here. Ms. Murray,
Here.
Ms. Gallagher,
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
All right, with that, we will move forward. We limited the public comment at 13 minutes is up. So I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:43 PM.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Craddy. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned.
Hey, Andy.
There's a roll call.